You're live. You hope you're live. Okay, I had another one of those confluence. Is it live? I don't know. It jumped back. Okay. I had one of those confluence kind of weeks lately where I was watching videos about literary things more, doing my own little book recommendation videos. And some of this I may have touched on in the recent video about the movies that didn't age well or whatever that two people watched or something. So you might want to go back and see that one. But so I don't think it'll be too redundant in any way. I know everybody kind of looks to these videos as sort of a writing fix-all or whatever, and nobody's going to write it for you. I said that in the previous one, like I said. But then I was also watching a screenwriter who teaches courses or something, and I mean, I can't say that all of his advice was unsound. The chief thing always with these people is, often write more. And in this case, it was don't focus on other things. If you're going to write screenplays, which I guess is true. But don't act like screenplays are, Shakespeare, I guess, or more challenging than they need to be, at least not to get started. Yay. Like I said, I kind of said that. And I haven't even read all the Shakespeare, barely read Shakespeare. I got a couple that are hopefully in a larger text that I can get into soon, instead of trying to read, the tiny little print that stuff like that tends to come in. But then, yeah, I was conflicted because I know this already, and I'm telling you in case you're younger or inexperienced, I guess, and you're not aware that it's really not that demanding. It's more who you know. So get used to it. If you don't have any connections, you might never sell a really better script than anything that guy probably will ever write. And how they get those jobs, I don't know. I was watching then just earlier a gal who I don't keep track of all their names. I watched too many videos to make note of all of them, but she was saying that she had got a job working for publishing houses, but didn't understand like really basic thing. It reminded me of a TA I had back at the university where I knew way more than he did. And it was really kind of hard, like pulling teeth I'd have to rewrite things and dumb them way down for a grade. And it was really kind of insulting. Get used to it, I guess. Because yeah, she was an editor who doesn't understand story arc or, some of these other phrases. Again, we're going more to literature than film on purpose. If I was going to go deeper into talking about her thing. And it just scratching my, how did you get this job then? And say, I learned so much from these older, experienced people. It's like, well, you'd have to, because apparently you graduated knowing nothing if you even went to college. I don't know. But I can say from a personal perspective that if you are a creative, you probably don't want that kind of a job. Same as you probably don't really want to be a teacher if you think you also want to be a writer. I know a lot of people kind of end up in that, and then academics have to publish, and yeah, it's almost kind of either or. You're almost better off to have a job at McDonald's where it's totally divorced from this stuff, so you're not burned out on it, or you're not always focusing on somebody else's work, trying to make that better without ever working on your own, I guess. So the other thing I saw the other night, PBS of all things showed a movie called Genius about the editor who brought us, I don't have the Fitzgerald books here. I did a whole video of Fitzgerald books, but they're all put away again. No, but He was the guy who brought us basically Thomas Wolfe, although I think this one was the other publisher when they offered him way too much money or whatever at the end. But yeah, Thomas Wolfe, famously would apparently spend, 8 hours on a description, of a minute little detail. Like if Stephen King had a grandpa, that might have been him, right? So I haven't really read him, but the contemporary, of course, Hemingway, the one that I've read, the one that I've read a chunk of, or half of. The one that I haven't read, but I've seen the movie a bunch of times, and I don't know if the movie is anything like the book or not. And the one that I picked up more recently that I haven't started yet, or another one I haven't started yet, and then the other one that I really like. Of course, The Sun Also Rises, but same editor, responsible according to the film. I didn't bother to check the historical accuracy of the thing, but it's lovely that it ties in because, one, it's about a book editor, but it's also about, famous authors from the 20s, but it's also about very briefly, when Fitzgerald went to Hollywood to become a screenwriter, and I think Faulkner did as well, later maybe. And of course was disappointed. Now in the movie, at this point in his career, he's talking about The Great Gatsby isn't bringing him more than like $2 a year in royalties, which is like a little bit more in today's money, but not enough to live on, being the point. And he's saying, I'm a hack, and why am I doing this to myself? But of course, he's been in a serious funk and a writer's block and every other thing. Like I said, it doesn't really go into his story at all, but mentions the overlap of these characters, how they know each other at the time, and him being, according to the film, kind of a friend of Thomas Wolfe, and Thomas Wolfe being kind of a not such a great friend, I guess. We'll just leave it at that. But yes, but see, Thomas Wolfe, for what little I know of him from the film, you're going to use the film guy because it's a film video. The characterization of him by Jude Law is that he is a consummate writer. He's always pouring out words. Same as this other guy who's this professor or writer or whatever that I was talking about earlier. He's a constant word guy too, but the kind of words that they're putting out are two totally different kinds of words, right? So when Fitzgerald goes to Hollywood, it doesn't work out that well, but he's already a writer who does kind of understand film writing. And I think I mentioned this before. So it's kind of funny that it wouldn't really pan out, because if he could just lay off on the description and focus on just, well, the visuals, he's good at that. That's the funny thing. Gatsby is full of that. That's why they've tried to make Gatsby into 3 movies already or whatever. With, varying degrees of success. Discuss, I don't know. I didn't think, well, I mean, the DiCaprio version had jarring elements or whatever, but I didn't think they mistold the story per se. And a lot of people, I think, felt that the Robert Redford version was flat or something. I didn't really see an issue with it. I thought the movie was pretty faithful from what I could remember. Anyway, this isn't going to be a book report on Great Gatsby or anyway. But my point, though, but the limitation I have here with the format of the YouTube that I always bring up is, with the copyright things, I don't know what I'm allowed to, show or read or whatever exactly. And so if you've taken any screenwriting course, they've given you some book, and which ones you've been exposed to. I've read 9 of them, I think, and I could talk a little bit about each one, maybe in a synopsis, but they're not that necessarily different in the basic structure of the film that they're going to explain to you how to map that out. And so I wish I could be able to give a little bit more how to maximize utilizing this book and why not to go into these books. Now, when I was in my screenwriting course, of which I had taken other writing courses, we focused on this one book because it had a different script than this other book that's, the most famous book. Both of those movies are maybe kind of out of date, but they're similar to each other in some respects, I guess. So, I don't want to get all bogged down on that. Neither of those two books would I say is my favorite book, but either of them is good enough to get you in a general, starting position or whatever. And then other books by, I'm positive I talked about this in a video before, but I don't remember. But, the characterizations of the McKee in the one film and all that. He does his seminar his way. I've never been to the seminar. But in the movie, it's shown in a certain way as a plot point. So take from that what you will. How much accurate is to the actual, seminar, I don't know. But I find that he is not the best for a beginning writer. I think he's better if you've written a few things and you need new inspiration because you're not sure how to fix them, or you're not inspired to start the new one that's going to be better than those other ones, combined or whatever. But but like I said, I don't think that you would want to take a job, again, either like that per se, or teaching or whatever. But I think that you should know those things so that when, and even these screenwriting books will be very vague on how long it should take to write a screenplay or a first draft. Well, how much research you have to do depends on, I guess, what type of thing it is. If you're just writing something that's kind of personal to you, then you're not going to research anything. You're just going to, put it all out there for the world to see and hope somebody likes it, right? In which case, I always think a first draft of that kind of nature, where you don't need to know anything about science or medicine or law or, some other thing, and you just write, a specific job or a specific military operation or something, something like that. A first draft should really only take you 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not joking. I mean, like, literally, you should be able to bang out at least half of a draft, at least enough to know if you really want to keep going on it for a while, or put it away for a while and start another one. Now, of course, that's the trap that they'll tell you: don't put them away and start another one because you'll never finish those other ones, blah, blah, blah. Again, that might depend on you as the writer. You have to know your own habits better than whoever's giving you this advice, right? I didn't agree with the one screenplay about having this totally polished first 30 pages and then the rest all goes to, like, see the thumbnail, this way, that way, wrong way. And he was even saying that that was an issue in the book about the issue of the book. I mean, when the guy who wrote the book is telling you, hey, I don't know why my students are having so much trouble finishing their scripts. I don't know, maybe because you have them polishing the first part before they even know what the ending is really going to be. Could be a clue. So yeah, I would definitely try to fill in as many scenes of the key scenes that you can. I don't bother with the note cards. That's another thing. You might like it. I find it's easier just to type in the main things in a header, and I don't use a screenwriting program. I just use a Word document, and maybe later I'll regret that when I want to get it, more correctly formatted or whatever. But don't worry about all that line spacing as much. I kind of obsessed about it for a while, thinking that if I just had all the line spaces done correctly, I'd know exactly how long it was and how long it needs to be, and all that. And then I kind of realized, no, don't worry about the column down the middle until other people are doing table reads. When you're just writing it for you, let the dialogue go to a third or halfway across the page and let it be flush with the end until you're ready to really start printing the thing out. Get halfway down, hit enter. Get halfway down, hit enter. Something like that. Don't worry about if it's exactly 120 pages. You'll know if it's, too long in spots and not long enough in other spots. And my other problem, and many of you might have the same problem, is I love dialogue. So I have all these conversations that, played out in my head, or, you had the conversation with the girl, but then you thought of what you should have said the next day. So you go home and, type it all out. But then when you turn it into a script, with the column, all of a sudden we're talking 3-6 pages. Like, that's just way too much. You can't have that much talk. You have to break it up somehow. And so for me, the hard thing is I'll have the big important key scenes, and then it's figuring out what the little junk is to throw in between. That's kind of where, half the time I wish I had a collaborator. And I think most screenplays that have been written and successful, except for, those few really talented individuals, I think almost all of them have been a collaboration at some point. I think I said this in the previous video as well. And I'm sticking to it. I keep trying to find a protege or something that, I think will be suitable. But so many of them are just, they're not going to do the work. And they are in the echo chamber. And, I already know their point of view. So it's really hard for me to give them something where I know they won't be able to get off their soapbox and just write it objectively and be faithful to the story and the characters, instead of wanting to interject their own little political agenda or whatever you want to call it. And, not every movie needs that. Many of them really are better off without it. Like I said in the previous, and I also did that video about It's Just a Movie that was kind of along those lines or whatever. But that wasn't necessarily writing advice as much as film criticism, I guess. And only like 8 people watched that video or something, or less. So it doesn't matter. I can say it again here, and maybe you'll go back and watch it there. And so I guess I don't have like a big climactic point to this video right now, as much as just stuff that was on my mind, because it, like I said, I had seen some of these videos, and then I saw that movie that somehow I had missed, although it was only like 8 years old or something. It wasn't, or maybe even less. It wasn't like an old movie from the 90s. Like, you haven't seen that, where, there's a bunch of them that came out way back when that I, saw and forgot about already. So yeah, I guess, as always, I always say, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I won't belabor this point very much longer, but, like I said, I wish I could get more into the meat of some of the screenwriting books, but I really just don't know how much I can. But, like I said, as far as getting started goes, I think most of them are going to be all kind of copying the first one. But there's other, like I said, there's other that maybe are slightly better. And you'll have to blunder through and figure that out on your own for now, because like I said, well, the other thing I guess I didn't say before, or maybe I did. I mean, there's plenty of other people giving out free advice, so that's fine. But if I want to be relevant, I can't really afford to tell you all the tricks just on a stupid video and expect to feel great about myself, I guess, when I'm talking to no specific students. But if I did have a class, an actual seminar, I think I would be bringing out these books and being like, okay, skip this chapter, read this one instead, that kind of thing. And so hopefully you'd get your money's worth, because you'd, feel like I had maximized your time and your potential, instead of just read this or don't, work on it or don't. I would hate to. I haven't had all wishy-washy writing teachers. In fact, when I was very first starting out, I had a writing teacher who was actually more proactive that maybe I would appreciate more now, but I just could not stand. I had a vision of what I wanted to do, and she kept giving us these assignments to make sure that we understood. Again, kind of like that girl, like she should have taken the class with that woman to become an editor instead of a writer, because then she would have understand what a flashback is and what a character arc is and what a point of view is and what a I know I'm kind of putting the beginning at the end here because I forgot to talk about some of this stuff earlier. I don't do these very scripted, folks. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if she had had a class like that, just take a creative writing class then. Maybe she wants to be a writer, maybe she's a writer, I don't know. But again, her personality and her tone and it's like, you should just be an 8th grade English teacher and learn this. You already understand sentence structure and grammar, fine. That's all you need to know to go do that instead. Whatever. But of course she did learn, supposedly. Well, I'm not, trying to say that she's a total idiot or anything, but again, how did you get this job in the first place, though? Because, I had to really learn the hard way, grinding it out on school paper more than anything was where I really learned more practical writing than all these other creative classes where they kind of let you do whatever you want, and even the one that I had that was kind of a stickler, she knew she could only push me too far, and I was still the most prolific one in the class. So it was kind of like, well, he's going to turn in 40 pages, and I'm lucky if I get 5 from anybody else. So we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I mean, I don't sit down and just clunk out pages like that anymore. I try to have kind of a point to it. But I don't always. I mean, that was kind of the fun of it, not so much in screenplays for me, but in fiction was, where will this go? I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go along. And then you'd get to a point where it would just turn absurd, though. Whereas with screenwriting, again, the kind of, that it's only going to be so long. So there's your first parameter, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, somewhere in there. Unless you're writing a 5-hour epic that, the 50s are over, chances are you're, not writing epics, but you might be, but probably not your first film, right? I think I said this before. So anyway, so you're already starting with, whereas a novel, you're just kind of, well, it'll be as long as it is, see how it goes. And so yeah, it was the thrill of discovery. Whereas with screenwriting, I think you have to tone that down, pare that back, and yes, be more of a hack. If you're trying to be that expressive, then write the novel instead, I guess. Like I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything that guy said, but I don't necessarily disagree with the gist of most of it. He would rather be a screenwriter than a novelist, and I think if you're watching this, that might be your focus, but I'm putting this in both playlists anyway, so if you'd rather, but I'm going on an extra minute, why not? Because one of the things I've always tried to do, and it doesn't work very well, and that's, I start it as one thing or the other, but then if it's a screenplay, I'm worried that whoever gets a hold of it to do the novelization is going to be a worse writer than I am. So I want to write the novel. But most of the time I want to write the novel more than the screenplay anyway. But it just takes so long to write the stupid thing that when I get to a certain point where I don't think it's a good enough novel, but I know I have enough for a script, I start doing an adaptation. And so a lot of my scripts are shortened, chopped. You could literally fit 3 screenplays in one of my novel ideas, kind of thing, by the time it's over. So it's pretty, but then I start slicing them up and deconstructing them from there. And so I end up with a lot of, like I said, 40 and 50 page kind of things where I know I have the meat of it. And, it's, do I want to sit down and finish this one, or do I want to find somebody else to throw in the junk? I don't know. It depends. So I got a whole bunch that I need to finish grinding out because probably that person will never come along. But again, it doesn't take me that long to write that many pages in a script form. So might not be good enough to film, but good enough for a first draft. And that's kind of what we're aiming for, again, before we start polishing and all that. So with that, I'm definitely going to stop now.